to begin the July 29th, 2013 Single Family Design Board. And we will start with roll call, please. Here.
Vice Chair Sweeney.
Here.
Bernie Bernstein. Here. Brian Miller.
Here.
Lisa James. Jamie Pierce. Here. Jim Boone.
Thank you. And I will open public comment. Any member of the public may address the Single Family Design Board for up to 2 minutes on any subject not on today's agenda. I see no one jumping up, so I will close public comment. And we'll move on to approval of the minutes for the Single Family Design Board meeting of July 15th, 2013. I have a motion, please. Thank you. And let's see, that would be here. Okay. We have 1676 Franceschi Road. Any comments, corrections? 822 Soledad Avenue. $745 Dolores Drive. $828 Summit Road. $1727 Santa Barbara Street. $3627 Campanile Drive. And that is it. All in favor? Nothing? The minutes? Aye.
Aye.
We already firsted and seconded, I think.
I will abstain
Okay, you'll abstain?
because I was
Oh,
not
okay.
present.
Okay, thank you. And next, we have the consent calendar of July 22nd, 2013.
And a motion?
Motion, please.
So moved.
Okay, second for anyone? Jamie seconds.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The consent agenda for Monday, July 22nd, 2013. Item A, 33 Rubio Road. It's granted project design and final approval with the MPO findings with comments. Item B, 1310 Shoreline Drive. It's granted project design and final approval with the MPO findings. Item C, 1226 Plaza Del Monte. It's granted project design approval with the MPO findings and was continued indefinitely to consent with comments.
And that's that.
And the items were reviewed by Board Member Sweeney and Board Member Pierce.
Okay, and all in favor of passing those minutes?
Aye.
Okay. And next, the consent agenda for July 29th, 2013. Yes. May I have a first, please? And a second? Oh, yes, can I make a motion? Okay, Jamie first, Bernie second.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Consent agenda for today, Monday, July 29th, 2013. Item A, 3425 Sea Ledge Lane. It's granted final approval with conditions. Item B, 965 West Mountain Drive. Was granted final approval with comments. Then the consent agenda was reviewed by Board Member Miller.
Thank you. And all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion passes. All right. Any announcements?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you. I do have a couple announcements. Board Member Zimmerman and Board Member James will both be absent from today's meeting. And item number 3, 3002 Seacliff, has been, at the applicant's request, postponed indefinitely from today's hearing, will not be reviewed today. And as it is not being continued to a specific date, it will have a new 10-day advance public notice prior to the next scheduled review date.
Okay, thank you. And we have no
Madam Chair, I have a question of staff, and maybe someone can remind me. I did, in fact, view the 2 meetings I missed, all 5 hours plus, while I was drafting at my drafting table. And one thing that came to my attention is we had an item brought to the board, and it doesn't really matter what the item was, but it was being represented by a person, a single person who was not the designer of the drawings that were in front of us. It may have been I'm not sure whether he was a real estate person or whatever. Anyway, so my question to staff is, does this board have the ability to require that a designer be here when the design drawings are being presented, particularly when it's concept approval? And can we ask the applicant to return and not complete any review until we have a designer in front of us?
Well, thank you, Board Member Sweeney. Typically, the applicant, as long as an applicant is present that represents the project, they can have anybody, whether that be the owner, can represent themselves and have a professional person draw the plans. The designer or architect does not have to be present. If the board requests such for future reference, I think that can be a request that can be made, but it's not required at the initial hearing.
Okay. The reason I bring it up, it just seems like we can certainly have the applicant use their time more judiciously, and certainly our time more judiciously if we're here talking about design issues and we're having to have it translated from someone that probably isn't the designer back to the designer. It doesn't look like that's very efficient use of anybody's time. So I just a thought in kind of observing those two meetings that I missed. Thank you.
Just for the record, too, I just would state that as the hearing is available on archive videos, we would recommend in most cases that the designer review that prior hearing on the archives.
Okay.
Okay. All right, we have no subcommittee, so we'll move right forward to 1164 Crestline Drive, project design review. Project design approval and final approval are requested. Project requires compliance with Staff Hearing Officer Resolution Number 038-13. It was last reviewed on May 20th. We'll wait for some notes. And if you could introduce yourself.
Don Swan.
Okay. There we go.
Don Swan, agent and designer for Mr. Dolis.
Welcome.
That's the last meeting.
Okay.
So, Madam Chair, the action of the board was on May 20th. Following motion was put in place. The board finds that the proposed modification is aesthetically appropriate and does not pose consistent issues with the single-family design guidelines and findings. The board is supportive of the revised rear elevations. Number 3, the board finds the configuration of the architecture at the front of the house to be aesthetically pleasing. 4, provide details of all the overhangs. 5, provide roof details. Action was taken on a motion by Zimmerman, seconded by Sweeney, and passed on a 6-0 vote. James was absent.
Okay, thank you. And your presentation, please.
Yes, everything's progressed. We went to the for modifications on the front and both sides for the residents, and it was approved a week or two ago. And basically, nothing has changed since we looked at it last. We've added details down to truss calcs, etc. And it's the same plan. One thing I may request, though, is that somehow I lost my list of colors, and you have the colors, and there's blank spaces on the elevations that I'd like to transpose on, if I may.
Okay.
If you
All right. So if we can get the color
accept that.
board back out, then we can
Yes.
see that happens. All right, let's see.
And also I created a Tier 2 plan on here just for drainage. Basically, we're keeping all the water on the site as best we can. We're going to create a little recessed area in the front around the trees. That is for the like a, what do you call it? It's and also on the side over here, or in the garden over here, for the swale.
Okay. Okay.
I'm sorry, there was something else that came into play. When we started getting into details, the pool, we had some stairs on the eastern side of the stairway to get down to the pool equipment that was here. And when we started designing the pool, it felt a little awkward because we have caissons for the pool, and we decided that we could simplify not having caissons for the stairway, that we would cantilever out the pool equipment on the bottom of the center portion of the pool. The next page.
There it is.
So that we would.
So this is a walkway then?
That's where the pool equipment is. That's all.
I see.
There's no walkway to
I
the
see.
pool. We're going to use stepping stones to get to that spot.
Okay.
To simplify by eliminating that walkway.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, there were two items on the last review, details of the overhangs and roof details.
Okay. Here's the overhang.
And roofing.
That's the skylight detail there.
Yeah.
Okay, well, looks like you've hit all the points. I'm going to open up public comment. Anyone with questions on this, comments on this property, you can step forward. You have 2 minutes. No one's coming forward, so I'll close public comment and we go to questions from the board.
Oh, pardon?
No questions?
Oh, no questions, sorry.
Jamie?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just was wondering, have we talked about a landscape plan for this Tier 2?
We really don't have one because there's nothing there. There's the pool, top of the hill is a patio. In front is two jacarandas and trees under.
So there's a lot of hardscape is what you're saying?
Yes, right.
Okay, because I'm just looking on the erosion, your Tier 2,
Right.
and
What's
I
there is
didn't
remaining.
see that it was mainly hardscape,
Well, I guess in other words, like I said, the bioretention swale area.
Right.
What's
Exactly.
there? Is it going to
Yes,
be dirt?
right.
It's just dirt?
Well, no. There's planting in there now. So.
Oh, there's planting in there now, but you're going to have to go in and turn it into a swale area, are you not? So you,
That's true. We planted into.
and what are you going to plant there?
Put the ground cover in there too.
Ground cover.
Yeah.
And then here, this is grading is existing, or this is not existing, you're creating this?
We're creating that underneath the
and-
trees.
And what's under the trees?
It's just let me take some. We have our photos, for instance, Michelle.
Because, I mean, whatever it is,
Photos?
it's going to be destroyed
Photos?
because you have to do this grading, correct? So,
Yeah. So it's going to be done by hand. right?
Yeah, that's what, by looking at the plan, it was hard to tell what's hardscape, what's going to be disturbed soil, and then you've got your oak tree here, and then you have a
No, there's no oaks there.
back
Oh,
here.
that's all on the slope behind it.
Okay, but what I'm curious
That's all
is
these here.
the ground
we got
cover.
the camera.
the ground cover that you're showing, that's going to be under the canopy of the oak?
That's all remaining, that's it, we're not putting
They're not
anything there.
doing anything there, I guess.
It says planted ground
Planted,
cover.
it says existing.
Existing.
Okay.
Planted ground cover on slope. And then all this is concrete
That's
here.
right, as it is now.
So the disturbed areas are just in the front here.
Right,
Okay.
The two areas of grading here
right.
and here. So I guess we need to know what you're going to propose there as a ground cover.
And that's what basically exists underneath the trees.
Well, hard to tell what that is, but are they replacing it with the same or?
Yeah, nothing's going to change that, except for that swale that we're creating.
Well, how do you feel about that, Jamie? Is that
It seems like there should be
some indication?
some kind of planting that helps purify the water. That's what the whole retention bioswale is for. And it doesn't have to be a fancy list, just,
One thing,
you know.
some kind of grasses or
Yeah.
something that
Okay,
Help clean it up.
okay.
any other questions?
Yes.
Yes.
I have just a couple architectural comment on landscaping. That skylight is occurring there.
Yes,
So is that going to show up on the, am I reading this right, on the east elevation?
no, well, you won't see it.
You won't see it, so if I'm on the east, I won't see that.
No.
And then, what is this, is the roofing going to come up and hide this little piece, or does that get painted?
It's
The
flashing.
curved part.
That's the curve of the,
So the flashing is
Yeah.
hide all of that.
right.
So, and then on the landscaping, so my question to my landscape colleagues on the board is if they create this little deeper area for retention, it's holding a little bit of water in there, and I'm assuming that water stays there for a short period of time and goes away. Does that have any effect on those existing trees?
It does. They're jacaranda trees, and they really detest being in water. So that's an issue, actually. If they get soaked and it's constantly wet under there, they're not going to like it.
The soil is very sandy.
Is it sandy soil? up
Yeah.
there? Oh, Northridge is,
Yes,
isn't it?
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
That's what.
That's why they're failing up there. A lot of homes are
Yeah.
not doing too well. Have to do caissons up in that area.
Right.
So does
Well,
it
that's
matter
okay
if it
then.
sits there a long time or if it's gone right away? Or
If it's gone right away, it's not an issue.
Yeah,
If
that's
it's
right.
sandy soil profile, then it's not a problem. But if it was clay soil in that, that would be a condition for death of jacarandas. So, okay, well, then that seems passable to me if it's sandy soils, which it is up there,
Yeah,
as I
right.
recall.
Yeah.
I've seen a soil profile before in the past. Any other questions? No. Comments?
Madam Chair, my comment would be in the form of assisting whoever might make a motion. It seems to me that the applicant is asking for design approval and final.
And final.
And my sense is we probably could give the project design approval and final with stipulation that it come back to the consent calendar with a landscape plan showing how they're going to take whatever they're going to take out and put back whatever they're going to put back. And that probably could be handled.
Does it need to come to consent for that? Stephen?
Well, in that case, I would just suggest that perhaps you grant a project design approval of the architecture and final of the architecture and continue it to consent for landscape review.
For final.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I get in for a permit?
Madam Chair,
Yes.
just wanted to clarify for the record, well, announce for the record, the staff hearing officer resolution was approved with the condition, subject to the following conditions, that the proposed light fixture at the east elevation door shall be motion activated, shielded, and pointed downward in compliance with the requirements of the outdoor lighting ordinance and design standards. If you would just
They're all
look at that.
flashlights anyway. They're all the flashlights in the overhang.
Oh, they're all in the overhang?
Yeah, correct.
Flush lights, okay. So they're all downcast?
They're all down, yeah.
Okay. Okay. Any other comments?
I just think the architecture of the house looks great.
Thank you.
Nice job. Okay, then
Madam
let's...
Chair, I have a quick comment.
Yes.
It has to do with this. Yeah, the reason why I think this project is supportable and it does fall within our guidelines and such is, first of all, the size, the concept. It's not getting too big. Everything is reasonable, and I think it conforms. But I do want the board to be aware that when you're driving down Las Positas and everyone else, start paying attention to the ridge line and see there are some big tall structures that, and this isn't going to be one of them from what I can tell, but we want to be aware of that when they get huge and multi-storied. And it isn't a hillside district, so they have a large lot size to work with. So just pay attention to that.
Is that still in the city or county up there?
It's in the city, yeah.
Madam Chair, I think Board Member Bernstein may not have been here, but we did talk about that extensively when this project first came for concept review in terms of the ridge. I brought it to people's attention because of the house next door, the whole hillside, so we did discuss it extensively, and that's why the comments in the last motion approved the architecture and the compatibility with the neighborhood.
Good.
Okay.
Thank you.
But thanks for bringing that up, Marie. It's an important point. Okay, then who would like to make a motion on this project?
Oh, I'll give it a whirl.
Good.
We move to give the project final approval or project design approval to come back to the consent calendar for a landscape plan.
It's project design approval and final on the architecture.
Yes, project design approval and final on the architecture. Thank you. With the applicant to come back to the consent for the final approval of the landscape plan. It's compatible to the neighborhood. The quality of the architecture is consistent with the style and quality of the structure and the surrounding neighborhood. And I think the client has followed the Good Neighbor guidelines and complies with the guidelines regarding privacy and landscaping and noise and lighting. And that's my motion.
I will second that.
And Jamie seconds. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Great, and I'll announce a 10-day appeal period.
Sorry, board member, vice chair, excuse me. Board members, I just wanted to point out that perhaps you should make a more specific comment for the landscaping regarding the discussion you had, because if you want them to address something specifically, or do they just not have a landscape plan?
Okay, yeah, on your, so in amending the motion that on the landscape plan, can you help me,
If you
Jamie?
could just address the bioswale areas, the areas of disturbance, basically in your project.
Call out whatever that planting is going to be.
Yes.
Call out what the planning is in the bioswale area.
And can that happen later after we can get in the building department?
Yeah, we've given you project design approval and final approval on the architecture.
Excellent, okay, very
No,
good, thank you.
but that answer, he can go to building department
Yes.
without that?
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay.
Can I mark those colors on the plan?
Oh, yes, why don't you mark those on your plan, and then we'll give us that back. And,
Yes, right.
and then your stucco's falling off there. Well, not literally.
Thank you.
All right, 828 Summit Road. This is third concept review. Action may be taken if sufficient information is provided. If the project requires compliance with Storm 3 wastewater management program prior to final approval, and it was last reviewed on July 15th. It should be fairly fresh in our memories.
Oh, okay.
Dawn, here's some more plans for you.
Did you want to fill out a... Yeah. Right here. Fill these.
Oh,
I don't know where this just came from. What's this?
Okay, well, we've got some minutes
Oh,
for this one.
all right.
Is that those, or is that from the last?
I'm not sure I got it.
Okay.
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 Shall I read them?
Yes, why don't you go ahead and read the minutes
Okay.
from the last meeting?
There was a motion on the floor with the following items for continued 2 weeks to the full board with the following comments. 1, study the front entry foyer, stairway and pathway for a centered design. Consider a fan-shaped stairway design and study the pathway approach. 2, thicken the walls in the open foyer to achieve an adobe design. 3, study detailing and proportions on top of the open foyer. 4, study the stairwell design with suggestions to make it circular. 5, clarify the roof eave details. 6, study the stairway and railing design of the east elevation of the second level exterior dining deck for more graceful and architectural consistent design. 7, study lowering the plate height of the accessory structures so that the proportions of the opening are more consistent with the height of the building. 8, study the front interior entry design of the accessory structure, thicken the walls, and provide a design that is consistent with and to match the design of the main residence. 9, study eliminating the tile decor on the roof eave or provide examples of a successful design. 10, provide a landscape plan, provide compliance with Tier 3 stormwater management program. 11, provide all final details, including details of the roof, brick railings, and garage door. Provide a color and material board. The motion was made by Miller, seconded by Pierce, and it carried on a 6-0 motion. Sweeney was absent.
Madam Chair, board members, if I might just make a quick staff announcement regarding the project, clarify a couple items. First off, I just want to let the board know that there is an active fire enforcement case for violation of defensible space and road clearance. I want to let you know I did do a site visit last week to try to determine whether the extent of the vegetation removal. I could not determine whether trees were removed. It was evident that some amount of vegetation has been removed. I have a call into the fire department to determine they will have to do the final inspection in order to close the case. It's not evident whether they did enough just to close the violation for the fire defensible space or whether they did more work. So that's one of the things I'd like the board to, and the applicant to be prepared to discuss with the board today. And I have some aerials from prior years so you can kind of get a grasp on vegetation over the last decade. Secondly, I did do a site visit specifically with George Johnson with the Creeks Department, as there was a concern that the proposed detached accessory structure is located possibly within a natural drainage area. So in regards to the site visit, the George Johnson from the Creeks Department was okay with the structure location in regards to proximity to the natural drainage. He did, however, have a suggestion that perhaps if a detached accessory structure was necessary for the site, that perhaps there could be a better location. So that would be what I would look to the board to look at specifically today. Additionally, I have asked the applicant to prepare have a arborist report prepared. So he did present that to me this afternoon, and it will be part of his presentation today. Again, because the existing accessory, or the proposed accessory structure is located within a close proximity to existing oak trees and under an existing oak canopy. So again, part of my question, the fire department will be the nature of the building a proposed structure underneath an existing mature oak canopy, tree canopy. We wouldn't want to see a proposed structure go in today and then later have the fire department maybe require removal of trees. So just, again, to consider for you today the location, the best location for the proposed detached accessory structure. That is it.
Thank you. And could you introduce yourself?
Jose Luis Esparza, I'm the architect.
Sorry, Madam Chair, board members, I forgot one other additional comment. A comment from George Johnson of Creeks was also a recommendation that if the structure, detached accessory structure, were to be approved in that location, given the close proximity, although he was okay with the location, given the close proximity to the existing drainage swell, he would recommend that the project would be conditioned to not allow future piping of that drainage channel.
Future piping?
So right now it's natural and it's vegetated. They wouldn't want it to be underground based on now proposing a new structure in close proximity to this drainage channel.
Madam Chair, can I just clarify and say back what I think you said is you had the Creeks Division and the Fire Division look at, we're only talking about the accessory structure as far as its location, as it's going to be before us, but we don't have the response yet from the fire department? Is that what you said?
Exactly. The Creeks Department looked at it for the location and proximity to the existing drainage channel. The fire department, I have not had a response from. I do have a call into them. They would look at it, the entire site, one for the violation of defensible space and the road clearance. They will have the final say to close that enforcement case based on the site inspection of the work conducted on the site.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Continue, and did we read the minutes yet?
Yes, we did.
We did.
And there are 11 different items
Right.
that need to be.
Okay, so let's see how you,
Here's the aerials from 1999.
okay.
Okay, I will try to respond to each one as outlined. This is the letter from the arborist, and basically there's 2 trees that he feels should be, we're not proposing to remove, but they should be treated as if removed. So our landscape plan does reflect 6 new 24-inch box oak trees that I believe are a replacement, 3 to 1 at that size for each oak tree. And they're part of the landscape plan. We also, part of the drawings is his assessment and showing which of the oaks are the ones that he was talking about. It's this one and
5 and 6.
5 and 6. So, or 5 and 6 are the ones.
Here, these 2 and that one.
Yeah. But he feels that 2 of them would be the ones that could be looked at as if they were removed, even though we're not proposing to.
And they mentioned number 9 here as that the construction could have significant impact on 9.
And number 7.
But only 2 that should be considered as if removed or mitigated
Were
as if
these 2?
removed.
No?
7?
Which 2 again?
It's in the letter. I don't recall which.
says-
7 and 9. Okay,
7
7
and 9, right?
and 9 listed
Yeah.
in this one. Because of the great impact that the construction will have on it.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, our retaining wall does come very
is a big
close
one
to this
here.
one. And that one is a 24-inch. This one is a little bit up the slope, so I believe that's why he wasn't, I mean, they do get impacted, but not to the point where they should be treated as removed.
Okay.
And on our landscape plan, you know, the 3 trees here, 2 here, and 1 more over here. And the designer was treating this as natural, leaving the site as natural as possible, with the addition of of this dry creek going down to the drainage swale here, with a small lawn here, a walking path connecting it to up here, and some more trees sparse in between. I believe number 2s are olives. Yeah. So, which would be a nice addition to the architecture, and here as well to mask this side of the house and this large oak tree and natural green as well. We do have a 5-inch here, which is doing fairly well. So creating a certain amount of screening from the neighbors.
Can I see the tree protection?
Okay.
Okay, so per the suggestions from the board regarding our stairs, so So I've centered the stairs coming up to the entry and flared them out at the bottom to make them more welcoming. In the elevation, here's a larger scale plan, and our walking path. I've redesigned so it comes here and then just goes straight back. Our retaining walls are now square to the building. They're a little bit taller. I believe the tallest one is 8 feet high in this area, but 7 to 6 because there's a little swell here, and fleshing out to grade here. And then in elevation, here's our staircase. One of the things that I did to redesign the entry foyer is, as suggested, I raised it, and I looked for a very simple form that didn't have the connotations that the last form did, so that we have a nice proportion distance from that to the detail. And this seemed to be, even though on some of them it was a little bit more elaborate, on such a small, simple entry, this is the one that I chose just as a simple detail to bind both of the entries together. And I also did the same detail on the guest house. And the guest house, I changed the roof detail to overhang. Before we had a plastered detail, and lowered the plate height to 10 feet. Now the walls of the foyer are 11. And I did the columns with the exposed beam and the corbel details on the back porch as to give it more detail. Okay, on the stairs going up to our rooftop deck, our dining deck, I've widened the walls so that these are 2x8. So once plastered, they'll be more like 10 and a quarter inches thick. added a landing
Front elevation,
here and then a return at the bottom, so that it really becomes a path. More, it's not as steep as it was before. And on elevation, I simplified the form, and I looked at a lot of the Spanish revivals, and they had it stepped, creating a space for pots. Now, I felt that this was too short to try to step, and to simplify it even further, I decided to do just a simple slope up to the landing, and then at the landing we have this wall that curves around, which gives you an opportunity for pots. And on the side elevation, because of the additional landing, it also gives us a spot for pots there. So it's very simple, but hopefully effective. I know that there was some question regarding the tile details. I felt that this didn't need the tile details, but I did keep the tile details at the tower and the front. I'm still searching for a very good example of where those have been done, and I know where they are. I just didn't. I know I've seen them, but I just need a little bit more time to find that example and bring it to you, if that's still something that you would like to see. What other questions have I not answered?
I've got so many papers on my thing now, I'm trying to find the 11.
I'm trying to what?
The 11 comments that...
Here.
Is that it? Oh, there it is, okay. Sorry. So we had study the front entry design, the accessory structure, pit and wall, I think we covered that. Study eliminating the tile decor on the roof eave. Provide a landscape plan. We haven't got to that yet.
Okay.
Stairway and railing design on the east elevation.
That was this.
Yeah, that's that. Okay, so we covered that. Roof eave details, we covered that, right?
Yes.
Did we? Roof eave details.
No,
What
we
were
didn't.
the
Oh,
roof eave details?
On the guest house, I had just
Oh, nice.
the plaster, rolled plaster detail, and I've changed that to an overhang to go more with the house and with the change in height, so that
Okay.
we'd lower the plate to 8-10 feet from 12 feet.
Study the U-10 portion at the top of the old foyer, you covered that. Thicken the walls in the foyer, you, I think, covered that. Entry foyer, stairwell and path created, design, so forth and so on. I think you did that. So we're down to landscape plan and then details of roof, deck railings, and garage door.
I don't have details,
Okay.
but I
Do
do
you
have
have a landscape plan?
I do have the landscape plan and a
That's the
color
beginning
board.
of a color board?
Yes, and this is the intent of the owners to, and they haven't selected a window manufacturer, but they want to have a distressed wood look on the outside with a natural stain and seal. They want the outside to be a light color, but not white. I picked a Whisper, done in Edwards. They want the roof to be a two-piece clay tile, Redland clay, Cafe Antigua blend, which is, to me, it looks a lot like the handmade tiles look, like in the Mission. But so that's the intent. And then on the wrought iron, they want to leave it natural patinaed with a seal, just a clear seal. So to just bring out the wrought iron and maintain it so that it doesn't change as much as it could. Okay.
Thank you. Can you tell us what type of stone you're proposing?
The stone would be a sandstone, and I didn't include that in.
Let's get back to this planting plan first. So,
Okay.
this was
So the only other item that was on this list that hasn't been addressed yet was the landscape plan?
okay. And then he showed us already in the beginning a few of the
Right.
tree selections
Okay.
and the replacement of the oaks, the 2 oaks that will be in danger. You're not really planning on taking those oaks out, though, are you?
No, they're not proposed to be taken out. We're addressing the concerns of the arborists that they could have a serious impact, and they should be looked at as if mitigated for as if they were removed. But no, we're not removing them.
Okay.
And he does have notes on how to protect the trees during construction on the tree protection plan, which we're also providing.
Okay.
So what the landscape designer has done is she's trying to leave it as natural as possible with the addition of this dry creek using the existing boulders as design elements in that dry creek. A small lawn area down here with olive tree here and landscaping down here. I can't read what does that say?
On-site boulders.
Yeah. So she's using a lot of the natural elements that are already there, with olive trees as accent trees here and here, and the new oak trees planted in these locations. And then the number 5 is the flowering pandas, or
It says flower garden planting beds, and then
right.
I guess over here, gardens and filler plants listing certain
Right.
species.
And then with the trees being the oak trees, the olive trees, and the
Maytens.
Mayan trees,
They're actually Mayten, yeah.
yeah, which are sorry, I'm trying to read it
I
back.
know, it's hard to read.
But as you can see, the sizes that she's picked are 24-inch box trees, so that they're not your little wispy trees. They stand a good chance of surviving, and they're bigger trees.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
if I could have a question clarified. I was just reviewing the arborist letter you submitted. Is there a plan that you have submitted that corresponds with the trees that they have identified?
Yeah.
I was just looking at.
Yes,
Yes.
it's the tree protection plan, and it is part of the submittal. It's the last sheet on the staple set.
Oh, there we go.
And it
So-
has the tree
So
protection
just to
notes.
clarify, you're not proposing to remove any of the existing oak trees around the proposed new detached accessory structure, but the arborist recommendation is that you should plant a 3-to-1 ratio for 2 trees that could be potentially impacted by this detached
Correct.
structure.
Correct. And that's what we've done.
And you've identified this. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And yeah, he's identified them by numbers on the plans, which coordinate with the letter.
Okay, thank you. Now I'm going to open up public comment. I have 2 slips here, and you get 2 minutes to come up and comment. The first slip I have is Eric Erickson.
Hi.
Oh, come on up and
You
you
need
have to call
sit
all the way
right
up,
here
sit
and
down,
identify yourself, please. And let me put this on. Okay, you're on.
Hi. I'm Eric Erickson, and we're at 824 Summit Road,
824 is right here.
and we
this is
would
the subject.
be the house.
You're right here.
you're on Summit Road.
You're actually on Summit.
We're on
and
Summit, this would be the flagged lot right behind us, directly behind us.
to-
And we love, first of all, I'd like to just say that we are very pleased that we loved Bob and June, who were there for 38 years, and now all of a sudden, we never saw what we saw, what we see now. And I guess our concern is that probably 16 trees were cut down, eucalyptus trees that were 80 feet high. And then around, this is an A-frame structure, there were 4 large trees that we never saw the house. And we understand that they're going to be building a new house that is 3 times the size, and we're all for that. We just don't want to see it. And we have a great relationship with the new people. They said that they're going to landscape, and we believe what they're saying, but they would have to put in 80-foot trees, not 24-inch box. So we're a little concerned how that's going to be achieved with the size of the house. And that really is our only concern, what we're seeing, because what we've done is we've proposed what it's going to look like when it's all up, and what they're going to be looking on to us. And it was all hidden when the trees were there, and I believe Ms. Sprecher has aerial photos of what it was before Google Maps as to what it is now. And that's my only concern.
Okay, thank you. The next slip I have is for Ann Sprecher.
Hi. I hope everyone got my email.
Yeah, we
Yes.
have it.
Good.
Speak right into the mic, please.
I'm Ann Sprecher. I live, actually my father lives, I own the property next door to Rick and directly across from the house
Okay.
at 820 Summit.
820 is here.
Yeah.
Okay, so
And
you're
as
fronting
I
on Summit.
voice of my concerns, there are a couple of concerns looking at the city guidelines. One is the character of the neighborhood. We've been there for about 15 years. And the thing that's so lovely is that they're very small homes. This is the first large home that's being built. There's some farther down, but right where this is, they're all homes basically under 3,000 square feet. Way under, most of them are about 2,000. And there's a beautiful ravine. And this is no one, if you look at the aerial shots that exist online, you can see nobody has ever built in there, because when it actually rains in Santa Barbara, it does flood and become a creek. And right now it's filled with wild irises. And it's sort of a buffer between all the neighbors. We all look out onto this. It's really like a natural park. And even with the structure that's there now, which is pretty small, this is my before shot, what we see from my father's desk, which is beautiful. He used to sit out there. He doesn't anymore. And the reason is because it's now what we see from the same shot. Now that's the small house, so I can only, he doesn't, our house is all glass, it's very modern, and literally that's taken from the front door through the hall and the dining room. So from our living room, dining room, the bedrooms, the whole house except for the 2 bathrooms, this is what we now see, 24 hours a day. And it's really unlivable. I could not sell my house now. So I'm very concerned. I went up to the property at 828 and I looked down and I see why they're not concerned, because I just saw in the last photo I sent you, because they're at a higher elevation and the neighbors behind are all at a low elevation. So all of our trees cover us from them, but we are exposed to a large house on the hill. We're even exposed to a small house on the hill. So when they build out, I don't see, unless they're doing incredibly large trees to block what we see, I don't know. We're goners. I mean, my house is literally unsellable at this point. So it's only going to get worse, but But 24-inch boxes, that's a joke. I mean, none of us are going to live long enough to see those grow. So I really would sort of like to see the house scaled back and tall growth replaced before anything else is done.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. I have a question, staff. From these photos, I can see that what was removed were eucalyptus and pine trees, which I know that the fire department rather frowns on. Was this by any chance, were these trees removed as part of that, what you mentioned earlier, as part of the defensible space? It's pretty far away from the actual building site.
Thank you, Board Member. Thank you.
Woolery.
For the day, Monday. That is why I had to call into the fire department. I can't answer that question. I don't know whether they've gone beyond the scope of clearing for the purposes of the defensible of space, or whether they have gone beyond that and removed trees that maybe they shouldn't have. And typically, there should be no tree removal at all when a project comes into. You can't submit a project and then go remove trees for the benefit of the project that you're submitting. It needs to be part of the scope of the work of the project. So if any trees were removed that is outside of the scope of the enforcement case for the fire department, it should be identified as built trees removed on a plan, and you should propose to mitigate for that.
Okay, thank you.
I guess I'm not as concerned about what was done as what will be done to mitigate it. Is that
Understood.
my
Thank
concern?
you. Can we keep these?
Yes.
Thanks. Okay, I'm going to close public comment then, and we move on to questions from the board.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
I have several questions. As I mentioned, I reviewed both meeting minutes, some detail on this project, so you'll forgive me if I may ask some repetitive areas. I don't think repetitive questions, but repetitive areas. First of all, your owners are not present here today,
Right.
correct? Okay. Second, can you shed some light on why those trees were cut down?
Well, I'm not aware of the trees that were cut down. We did have a survey when we started this project, which was done, right after I came on the project, and the only tree that we could see that was cut down there was a 20-inch stump here, and it looked like it was it was not an oak tree. I don't know what kind of tree that was.
Well,
And that from when I came to the project, that's the only tree that I've seen that was
Okay.
removed.
Can you share with us, maybe it shows in your landscape drawing, delineate where this stream is when it does occur, when it does rain? Can you show us where that is?
that's the same here.
Yeah, it's almost it almost follows the.
Yeah, I've been out to the site. I kind of
Yeah.
understand that, but can you show us on
Yeah.
the drawing, please?
It goes almost pretty close to the property line, and then
So it's over here.
yeah, and then it kind of goes. See how this is the low point? It goes here and then onto the neighbors.
And as I recall, going out to the site on Friday, this appears to be piped in as it goes under that driveway. Is that correct?
Yeah, because I have not seen any
Okay, so there's a pipe
anything
under here.
that shows it going over the roadway,
Okay.
and it doesn't have the concrete, your typical concrete when it goes over the roadway.
Okay. And then I noticed that I was on the site on Friday morning. There is a truck that looks in need of repair that's parked out there. There's a whole bunch of door frames and so forth parked in the parking lot. Who are those?
Those belong to the owner. He's using it for storing doors that he's purchased that are going to hopefully be used for this project.
Okay. Then if we could go to go for a minute to the architecture.
Sure.
And just reiterate for the front elevation. So as I read these drawings, and because I did come in and also look at the drawings, the existing A-framed house, I'll describe it as such,
Yes.
the dimension of that is from here to here, am I reading that correctly?
Yes, and then it splays out.
Correct.
Because
The roof splays out,
Right.
and then the higher A-frame piece is this dimension from here to here.
it's a little bit smaller. That's why the addition
Okay.
on the second floor.
And then the deck that's out in front, where is that on this?
The deck is from here to here, and then this is where we have existing post, and then it cantilevers like 5 feet towards the driveway, which we're removing.
Okay. And then over on this side, I'm reading this, if I read this, that should be the finished floor line, correct?
Yes,
Okay, and so as I read these drawings, this is a 9-foot plate height,
yes.
okay? And the door frames are at what?
The door frames are 6/8. Yes.
Okay, and then this wrought iron railing, is it decorative or is it just as we see it in this drawing, just vertical?
Well, we're gonna use
like that.
Yeah, we're gonna use decorative. We weren't planning on using this much because this is the door,
Okay.
but we were planning on doing
Some decorative element.
buttons. Yes.
Okay, and then as I understood this foyer, this is actually open?
This is where that wrought iron gate goes in.
Okay, so what does that wrought iron gate look like? No, that doesn't really show anything. What does it really look like here? What's the gate look like?
Oh, I
haven't drawn it.
I haven't drawn it in because I've got a picture of it. And I submitted this to you last
And
time.
then, if I'm standing there on that front porch, if I'm standing right here, that's the wrought iron gate.
Yes.
What does that door look like?
That door will be a wood door, distressed.
With that distress, but you
Yes.
don't have it drawn yet.
I haven't drawn. It is a 4-foot wide by 8-foot door.
And then the windows on the windows on the stair tower.
One back.
I know there was some discussion in the meeting about, I think there was some discussion about these being operable,
Yes.
and that's still the case?
Yes. I placed them so that they're
Reachable?
yeah, right. They're within 42 inches of the landing
And
or
these are
stairs.
clear?
Yes.
Okay.
Those will be.
And then there was some
clear.
discussion about, I believe there was some discussion, and maybe I got projects mixed up, about a large window that,
Oh, the stained glass
Stained
window.
glass, yeah, is that still in the- is
no,
that gone?
that has been eliminated.
okay, so that's done. Okay. And then I'm assuming that when this comes back with final details, that this will be a double starter row
Yes.
for the roof tile. And you indicated that the idea on the color board is this is the body,
Right.
the trim around the windows, and then I'm assuming the trim on the wood.
Yes.
So far is going to be this kind of rough thing.
Yes.
Now, would there be
Distressed.
any gutters on this house?
Yes.
There's some indication here, but I don't see gutters here on this side, or is that going to happen?
No, there will be, and
So they're just not showing.
I just didn't. Here's the downspout. Here's the gutter. They're half round. They'll be copper and left to patina.
And then these are wood corbels, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And that's a ceramic tile, but we don't have a sample of it.
I don't have a sample of that yet.
Okay. And then this is the address?
That is just the address.
Okay.
I
Is
figured.
that a terracotta piece? Do we know?
I thought that this could either be paint or a terracotta piece.
Okay.
But just something that.
You don't need to
Okay.
go. I understand.
Yeah.
Okay. And then this has some sort of dimension to it.
Yes.
Okay.
That does have a
And
1.5
these have
inch.
dimension to it, and I'm assuming, just by what you've drawn, that this is some kind of sandstone?
Yes, that'll be sandstone with a
That's
cap.
probably a precast element that will
Yes.
go around the opening? Okay, and then the stone, I think you already mentioned you didn't have a sample of the stone.
No, I don't. I need to get one of those.
And then the steps are going to be concrete, or what are the finishes of those?
I see the stairs either being a similar material as the sandstone or a tile that reflects that color.
And then these little Juliet balconies are open, or they have tile on them, or what do you?
Because of the dimension, there really isn't any landing there.
But it has some dimension, so is it open
Right.
to the
Yeah.
to the ground?
Yeah, because you can only have like
You see
like
that
3
sometimes.
inches.
They bring the wrought iron out, and then it's just open.
Yeah.
And then on the site plan, go back, maybe the landscape plan's better to look at. This is indicated as concrete. Does it have a pattern? Does it have a color?
Right now it's the existing driveway is just gray concrete, no pattern.
And so does that stay? Is that what we're looking at?
They do propose to do paver sand base
sand base?
with the sand base, so
Okay. And then this material is going to be some kind of
stone.
patio?
Right.
Okay. And this is some kind of gravel walkway.
Yes.
And did I read this right? This has a railing, or it just has a little curb?
We will be putting railings to match
The railings on
the railings here, but I didn't show them on the elevations for clarity.
Okay. And that'll happen over here and here.
Yes.
And then we don't have a complete survey over to the property line, correct?
This is all we were given by the surveyor.
Okay. And I think I understand where existing trees versus new trees are. Okay. That's, for the moment, that's my questions. Thank you.
Yes, Brian.
Question. In the hallways, are those French doors?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions?
For staff, on the Oak Tree report, where it's saying that it will have an impact on number 7 and number 9 oak tree, and it's saying mitigation of 3 to 1. Isn't it 10 to 1?
It's changed.
Let me look in the ordinance for you. I'll get back to you on
Yeah.
that.
I believe that it's 10 to 1 if you use 5 gallons and 3 to 1 if you use 24-inch box.
So you're
that's
recommending.
that-
So you're saying 24-inch box.
right. That's
Okay.
that's what the information I was given, but
Okay.
but definitely if staff can verify that, I'd appreciate it. Yeah.
And then I had a question. I'm sorry if I didn't catch it. What is the accessory building for?
It's to have guests whenever they come over, they have somewhere where they can stay.
And why did they want to locate it right there?
If we go out on the site, there aren't very many other opportunities to locate it. Once you get beyond the building pad that we've chosen, it's too steep to locate it where the existing driveway. It just wouldn't make any sense to do it over there. This was the only opportunity that we could see, an accessory building being located.
I guess I'm wondering, kind of straight up and to the right, it looks like the same contours in that area where you have the maintenance, but you're not in the middle of a bunch of oaks there.
Okay.
Yeah,
Right in here.
like if you look on the, yeah.
Can you come show us
Yeah.
over here, please?
Like in this area. So you've got all these oaks right in here, and it's pretty open right in there.
This creek from the...
So anyway, it just on the topos and looking at that.
Madam Chair, to answer Board Member Pierce's question regarding the oak tree removal section, chapter title vegetation removal in chapter title 2210 specifically says for oak tree removal, any oak tree with a minimum trunk diameter of 4 inches measured 4 feet from the base of the trunk removed shall be replaced by 5 oak trees of the same species elsewhere on the lot. It's 5 to 1.
Okay.
If they're greater than 4 inches in diameter, 4 feet high.
Okay.
There isn't a size. There isn't a size reduction.
No, it's just if the trees proposed for removal are greater than 4 inches, measured 4 feet from the base of the trunk, they should be replaced by 5 oak trees of the same species.
The other question I had is you have on the slopes you have rotors to irrigate. So could you identify that area, because you have drip and you say on her landscape plan she's got slopes will be pop-up rotors.
Unfortunately, I don't have that information. I would have to ask the designer to give me that information.
Okay, because I think we would really need some clarification on that. The other thing is she doesn't have on, she has put a carpus for screening down here, but she didn't say what type, what variety.
Where are they? That's it.
I will ask her to specify.
Any other questions?
Madam Chair, thank
Yes,
you.
Bernie.
I guess I just want to make a general comment to staff to see if we keep on getting these people that are coming that say the trees were all torn, cut down. This is maybe the 5th time that this has come before us, so it's not about this specific project. So maybe somebody can follow up with the property sells, and then 2 weeks after the trees are gone. This is happening all over Santa Barbara. So that's just a general comment, but I'd like to look at page 4, if we could, just for a minute. And if you could, the deck that is the rooftop deck, is that the same as the dining? You're calling the
Yes.
dining? That's the dining
That's our
deck.
dining
So
deck.
that's about the dimensions of that, or about, that's what I was looking at. It's all about, it's 19 by 19.
Excluding staircase.
And then there's another smaller deck at the second level. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Comments?
Madam Chair, before we get into comments, I would just like to make a couple staff comments. One, I think based on the application submitted before us today, that there should be a complete survey that shows the rest of the parcel and showing all the any evidence of what was there. Additionally, on the landscape plan, that should be completed, specifically in regards to the neighbors that came today, being that those are the 2 adjacent properties that were concerned today. Additionally, the arborist report was just submitted to me this afternoon, so I have not had a chance to review it other than glancing at it at the meeting today. It will need to be reviewed by the environmental analyst and approved by the environmental analyst before we can take action on this project. And third, I just wanted to say that staff looks to the board to address the following items. 1, the size of the detached accessory structure, the appropriate location of the detached accessory structure, the size, bulk, and scale of the proposed residence, that you look carefully at the neighborhood compatibility guidelines. One of the applicant neighbor comments suggested that perhaps story poles be erected, so I wanted to put that before the board to consider story poles for the proposed size, bulk, and scale of the main residence. And that's it.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, may I start comments?
Okay.
I'm going to take a little bit of time here.
Okay.
First of all, you need to let your owners that their credibility, at least as far as I'm concerned, is in real doubt at this point. Okay? Having an applicant come to us and having torn out this site before, as staff has outlined, is not acceptable. Now, I understand there was some fire issues, et cetera. We would have liked to seen that ahead of time. Now we're relying on staff having to go backtrack to the fire department to find out what was to be taken out and what wasn't. So I can tell you for myself, I am not a happy camper. This is not acceptable. You need to convey that to your owners. In fact, I would prefer your owners be present here. This board is serious. This is not a game. With regards to the arborist report that was handed to us a little while ago, I'm quite concerned, and in light of the location of this accessory building, given this arborist report, I'm not going to support that location at all. It's been my experience. I was experienced many years ago with trying to save 2 specimen oak trees on a major project here in Santa Barbara. Went to great lengths to try to save those trees in a similar circumstance where we had foundation footings right up against the root, outside the tree line, but up against the root structure. Ultimately, those trees did not survive, and that was a lesson learned. So I'm not going to support anything where an arborist tells us that those trees are in jeopardy. And I don't care how many trees you replace with those 2 oak trees. This site is large enough that you can find another location for that accessory building. You should not jeopardize the growth of those oak trees. My grandchildren won't see the large oak trees again. That's not acceptable. So I'm not going to support the location of that. I already had on my list that this applicant needs to provide us with a full landscape plan. You need to give indication during wet weather what is the main route of the water that travels through this site. I want to see a drawing that indicates where that footprint is. With regards to landscaping, I think that my colleague's comment and question about where these rotors will be located is extremely important. We need to see a preliminary landscape irrigation plan indicating where those would be placed. You can also tell your owners that I'm not happy with the owners storing debris on the site prior to start of construction. A truck that needs repair with its hood open and sitting there on that site is not acceptable. Materials sitting on that site in plain view of the neighbors is not acceptable. Now, let's go to the building itself. When I listened to the comments of my colleagues at the last 2 meetings, and I know they have tried to help you work your way through this, but we're not a design school. And this Spanish architecture is not one you garner by picking and choosing from photographs out of a book. That's not how we do good quality Spanish architecture here in Santa Barbara. And I would suggest strongly that you may need some design assistance in culminating and completing this job. And I understand that you're probably a very competent architect. I'm a competent architect, I like to think, but I also know my weaknesses. I probably can't produce a good set of working drawings. It's not my strong strength. That's why I have partners or had partners before I retired. My strength was in design. So not all architects can be perfect. So I would suggest strongly that you may want to seek some design advice. I know there was a comment made by a few of my colleagues in previous meetings about projects in other neighborhoods and how important those other neighborhoods are to our community. No neighborhood is not important to this community, and I think that this neighborhood requires just as much care about the design of Spanish architecture as we would find in the Upper East Side, on the Riviera, or anywhere else in this community. I was out at this site. This current house that's sitting there is highly visible from Summit Road. And I think that whatever we place there is going to be very, very important. I understand that, under our guidelines now, the FARs are under our recommendations, and that's acceptable from that point of view. But as I always do it, it's based on site per site. And even though this is a large site, this is still a house being situated in a place that's going to be high visible from several homes that surround it. And just to share with the neighbors that are present here, the board has been told many times, and we've, I think, said it ourselves many times, we're not here to guarantee individual private views. We're here to assure that neighborhood compatibility, as Ms. Bernstein likes to remind us on many occasions, is compatible with the neighborhood, not with individual homeowners. With that regard, in terms of the elevations, I think that the proportions, and it's been shared with you in the last two meetings, still aren't there. I think the struggle that you're having is the fact that you've got plate heights at 9 feet. That attributes to the size, scale, and bulk of this house, and I think that you need to reconsider those plate heights. Yes, there are occasions in a large living space where you want a high ceiling, you want a cathedral ceiling, a lot of Spanish architecture that was done by some of our prominent Spanish architects, or architects that did Spanish architecture, had wonderful living rooms that had open beams, trusses, so forth and so on. But it was confined to that space. It wasn't arbitrarily done over the whole house. Some of the rest of those houses had plate heights that were 7 feet 6 inches or 7 feet. I think you have the opportunity here to deal with the plate heights that would really make a dramatic change in the size, scale, and bulk of this house without changing the footprint, without changing your design intent. I think it can occur here. I think the proportions between this porch, those columns, the window openings are too high. The same thing occurs here. If this main living space is the place that you want to do a trussed interior ceiling, so it has a high volume, that's perfectly acceptable. But there's many ways to accomplish that without these proportions. I think those proportions are not correct. The windows really don't fit with how this is going. The stair tower, I think, is still problematic. You have a very high volume that's going to get quite dark. Stair towers happen to be one of my favorite things to do, and I have one in my own home. And it really makes a difference of how you treat these windows, where those windows are located, and how that volume is created. And I think that we're not there yet. I think this stair tower needs a considerable amount of work to be done. This staircase here is, for one thing, I think you need to check the code, but I believe the code, I don't have the code right in front of me, but I believe the code says that those railings can't be further than 8 feet apart. This staircase is, I think, they just scaled it, 9 feet. So I think you need to think about that. I think you need to think about how this edge condition is dealt with. You're introducing a very delicate wrought iron vocabulary here that, if it isn't handled correctly, could look quite spindly. It could not be in keeping with the overall essence of what you're trying to introduce here, which is Spanish colonial revival architecture. Same thing goes for this staircase. I think, having done many of these staircases myself, there is another way to do this, the incorporation of a pot, a cylinder, or some other element. Go look at the staircases at the Biltmore Hotel. They're wonderfully done. They're very simple, but they're very elegant, and that's not there yet. I think that the issue of how you're handling the eaves, that's why I think in the last set of comments there was a question about what those eave details really look like, what the rake details really look like. I think we really need to see that to have some assurance that this house is going to be designed in the vocabulary that you're proposing here. The same goes with the proportions of these light lanterns. I would want to see what the light lanterns actually look like, what the scale is, what the size is. I think that if you look at how tiles are placed in stucco, that there is a rhythm that is correct. I don't believe that you're there yet. You might be on the stair tower, but you need to look at the size and design of those tiles to have any real effect. If that's your purpose, to have a decorative tile, then you probably really need to pay attention to how big these things are, and will they have a visual effect for somebody approaching the house from the bottom of the driveway, from the drive up, etc. I'm really not sure, unless maybe the purpose here is to deal with handicap accessibility, why we have this big ramp here. This is not a large commercial building. This is not a big public edifice. I'm really perplexed at why you're spending so much effort to put in this big ramp that could be done as a part of the landscaping. And I think if you look at the contours, the ramp that really addressed and embraced the contours of the site, you probably could come up with a landscape proposal that got you from here to there without having to do a ramp. You have enough site to do that on. I think that's a very awkward solution, and I think it needs a lot of work. I'm just suggesting to you that if you come back to this board, that you may want to come back not in 2 weeks, but at a time yet to be determined, so that you can take some real time, work with someone that really understands how to design Spanish houses, so that you can come back with a design that this board can then, and certainly the neighborhood, can adopt and buy into, because I think otherwise you're going to be here meeting after meeting for several meetings to come. Those are my comments.
Thank you. I would like to go next, if I may. I was going to say exactly what Mr. Sweeney did about that ramp in the front. It looks incredibly industrial, and there is a landscape way to get that. If they are insisting upon that, then I think a more natural approach is the way to go, because this isn't an institutional building. Also, this is not a professional landscape plan. It's extremely weak. You can't even tell what's what. It's poorly done. The fire department will never pass it. First of all, the fire zones have to be placed on this. You've got a tree right here, too close to the building. It won't fly. So I suggest you hire a professional to do this, that you can get a bona fide irrigation plan from. Other than that, I am grateful for the changes that you made to the architecture as far as the front entry goes. I think it's a big improvement. And again, I defer to the architects at the table for most of the architecture, because I know they know what a true Spanish architecture is supposed to look like. I do think the stair tower is too heavy still. It's just too big of a mass in the front. The other thing is that on the wall plan, there is no top of wall, bottom of wall anywhere. You haven't put the actual heights of the walls anywhere, and that's pretty important that we know that. We need that information. So, at each interval here, what's the top of wall? What's the bottom of wall? Where's the grade? This is all information we have to be able to determine if the design is going to fly or not. And I also support a different location for the accessory building. There's plenty of room here. And definitely want to know why those trees were removed. So if you can come back to us with that answer, it'd be most appreciated.
I'm trying.
Okay. Yes.
How are you doing?
Brian.
Okay. We're very passionate. Following on what Fred said, yeah, it's a very awkward Spanish colonial. What I really notice, and I'm struggling with this area is very awkward. The ramp, I don't know why they want a ramp. It's very commercial, like Fred said. You have too many doors. I don't know why you have French doors in the hallway. This is very odd. I mean, it's just not. It's too much. just too much. Your tower, I struggle with it too. I suggest you make it a round tower. And did you visualize what you're seeing when you look up to the ceiling? Because you have no windows or any kind of fenestration. It's like a dark space up there. And this is kind of awkward too. What I would really recommend you do is, like Fred said, there's some wonderful books out with George W. Smith, G.W. Smith, our iconic architect of this area, and look at his site plans and how it's very simple, you know, and I really like what you did here. I think you're going in the right direction. The rooms are a little big. They could be smaller. I also think you've got to lower the plate height to 8 feet on the second floor, at least. And the other thing is, what I think is what would be a really fun thing. Have you ever been to Old Town San Simeon? Up north?
No.
You should go up there and look at those houses that were designed by Julia Morgan for her staff on Old Town. In fact, if you drink wine, you go to the Sebastian store. Hearst they have a great selection. You can go wine tasting, but go see those houses that were built there, designed by Julia Morgan. They're spectacular, early California Spanish style that are just gorgeous. But to really look at how the proportions are, the connection between the wood decking and the way the plaster is and the Spanish tile. But it's an Old Town San Simeon. But those are great homes to really look at and kind of get you hopefully inspire you in terms of the look and feel of a early Spanish colonial. I think those are my only comments. I think you've had
Comments? Jamie?
Well, I'm also going to defer to the architects regarding the Spanish architecture. I think they definitely know better than I do about that. I also agree about we need a professional landscape plan and an irrigation plan. I think that there hasn't been enough research on the accessory building as far as its location goes. I'm also very irritated to have to try and solve a mystery about what happened to those trees. We should know that. We should be having, like Fred said, the owners here explaining. It's not something that we should be trying to get information about. And then the other thing about the story poles, I agree that this is important. It seems like whatever we're going to be looking at is going to be a bigger house. It's going to be very visible. And I think that we should really think about asking for some story poles.
Bernie?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you for putting up with all of our comments. I think it might be a little bit premature for story poles since we don't have the actual size, bulk, and scale figured out. So maybe, but yeah, I do appreciate the neighbor's letter that we just got today, so we haven't really had a chance to look at it much, at least I haven't, but this is by far going to be one of the largest homes in the neighborhood, so if it's going to continue to come back and be this big, we will want to see all the architectural elements that have already been explained so that it's, the design and the proportions are beautiful and compatible. Thank you.
Okay.
Madam Chair, I have two other issues. I agree with Ms. Bernstein's assessment about story poles at this point. But I do believe that I think that ultimately we're going to want story poles once all of the property is located to our acceptable. And I was looking for, I can't find, I think this is going to require the highest level of story pole requirements because it's essentially a new site with a new building on it. So you may want to review that in our guidelines. I was trying to find it to give you the exact page, but I can't find it right now. So I would suspect that this board will support that at some point. That will be made into a motion in one of the meetings. The other concern I have is about the dining deck. The dining deck was on my list. Obviously, it's gotten to by an exterior staircase. It doesn't appear like it's accessible from anywhere inside the house. But the deck itself is as big as a two-car garage. And it also is positioned on the site, I believe, unless I'm incorrect. I believe it's right here, correct? Yes. And it's going to look right across to the deck that we just saw from the neighbor at 824 Summit, I think it is. 820 Summit. Yeah, so that dining deck is going to look right into their deck. I think that needs a resolution. Has been pointed out to us on other occasions, we're not here to deny the applicant a deck, but we certainly are here to talk about its size and its location. And right now I have a great deal of concern about where that deck is located and how big it is. Because of its association not only with 820 Summit, but the other houses. And if you go out to the site, this house up here, which I think fronts on Alston Road, that has a direct view down into this piece of the house. I walked up on the site like right up in here, just off the driveway, and looked back up. This house is going to have, even though we haven't heard from them, they may not understand what's going on. They're going to have a big impact by the placement of this house. From they're a single story house with their patio back up here. That's right there. So I'm concerned about that.
I can follow up on that, Fred. The transition from this roof to this doesn't work. It's very awkward, so I don't think I can support that deck now. It's just not a viable architectural entity. Thank you. To the whole cohesiveness of the building itself, I think if they maybe study having their dining in the front of the dining room, somewhere in this area would be a nice area for dining or something here, but up on the roof, I just can't support that the way it's configured.
Brian, if I could follow up, I think one of the tools in your toolkit as an architect that probably would help this board and certainly help the neighborhood understand what this house is going to look like is the use of a model. Now, in the old days, you would just make a hand model. That's how I do it because I don't know how to do it on a computer. But certainly a computer model is acceptable. But I think if we could start to see this house in 3 dimensions, part of your challenge on behalf of your clients is to be able to tell your story and tell your story in such a manner that everybody else understands it. And so one of the difficulties I think many of us are having as I listen to the questions is us understanding what this thing really looks like in 3 dimensions on the site. So any tool in your toolkit that you can pull on besides just drawing elevations might help you sell your design a lot better than where we've seen it today. And I realize that might cost your owner some more money because obviously you have to be paid for your time. But if your owner wants to deal with an expeditious review of this project, just like requesting a professional landscape plan, the sooner that happens, I think, the better in terms of timing and ability to utilize your time, and certainly our time, to improve this project.
Madam Chair, I have one more question for staff. Did you say that you were asking for him to include a plan, the architect to include a plan in relationship to the other houses? Am I imagining that?
No, that is a typical requirement to show a site plan with the adjacent building footprints.
Right, so he might need to reduce the scale to include, because obviously there's big properties here, but I think that would be really helpful. Beyond just the photos.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
While we're talking to you, Michelle, so if they are going to be working on this and then coming back again, but the neighbors have already gotten their one and only notice, is that correct? So if any neighbors need to know more, then it's up to the neighbors who already know to get that, and also for the applicant and the owners to share their project design ideas and meet. There's a compatibility guidelines in our book in the back about how it's
The good neighbor
good
guidelines
neighbor
and tips.
guidelines and tips. Thank you.
And just to address Board Member Bernstein's comment, it is noticed just once before the first public hearing. Any neighbors of concern from this point out can ask to be added as an interested party. Then they will receive the agenda a few days prior to the meeting in the mail.
Thank you.
Okay, who would like to craft a motion?
Stepping forward.
No, you had.
Shall I? I have a list to say, so I will try to. I will try to.
The onus
draft
is
them.
on you.
The onus is on me. Okay, you all remind me if I forget something. We as a board would move that this project return to us on an indefinite schedule, so as to allow the applicant and the owners and the designer to address our issues. Let me just start going sheet by sheet. I guess maybe that's the easiest way to do it. That the board, recommendation of staff, requires a full and complete site topographic survey to the extent of all of the edge of property. That survey should also then indicate the location and footprint of the adjoining homes on the 1, 2, 3, 4, looks like 4, 5, at least 5 adjoining property sites. That topographic survey indicate the probable area during wet weather of where the stream, so-called stream bed, may be located, and also indicate if there is existing piping under the access driveway that comes from Summit Road that would drain that creek area. That the board feels that the square staircase is still not appropriate, would encourage a further study of a much smaller size scale and bulk staircase on the design north side of the property. That the proportions of, well, let me get to that next. Am I going too fast for you? That the so-called ramp from the driveway to the front foyer gate opening be restudied so that it is incorporated as a component of a landscape design rather than an appearance of a handicap ramp. That the dimensions and the detailing of the wrought iron stairwell at the entry staircase coming from the driveway to the open foyer be studied further, provide us some sections and some details of what that would look like. If there are railings to be placed on the patio that are adjacent to the dining and bedroom number 3 area, that if there are railings that occur on that wall, provide drawings that demonstrate what that would look like. On the plans, provide us top and bottom of wall at every location where walls are being proposed, either as parts of exterior staircases or terraces or decks. There are several members of the board who are not ready to accept the so-called dining deck in terms of its location and its size, particularly as it relates to the visibility from the surrounding neighborhood and surrounding homes that are to the east and north of the site. That the board is still concerned about the proportions and scale and size, scale, and bulk of the entire home. They would recommend that a careful study be made of the plate heights, particularly at the second floor, where 8-foot plate heights may be more acceptable. That a variety of plate heights may be a better solution on the first level. That we receive some section and detailing of the proposed balconies. That we get a photograph or an actual sample of this type of sandstone being proposed for the vertical wall locations, and how that integrates with the paving material proposed on the landscape plan for both the driveway and the walk areas. That the applicant needs to reconsider the size of the accessory building, the location of the accessory building, the plate height of the accessory building seems to be excessive at 10 feet. That one looks at the configuration of the foyer element to the accessory building. I guess I'm not terribly in favor of repeating the same entry element that's on the main house at the accessory building, but let's not go there just yet. That we understand the size and style and locations of all exterior light fixtures, particularly if there are fixtures that are hung on a vertical element in the home. That we get some rough details at this level of the decorative elements at the foyer, and including the address element that would be placed at that elevation. And that we receive a further detailed landscape plan that would indicate a preliminary irrigation plan, that the landscape plan indicate clearly which trees are existing and are to remain, which trees are to be protected per the Arborist report of July 16, 2013. That the landscape plan be addressed by a professional. That the landscape plan indicate which plantings exist other than the trees that will remain, and which planting is to be removed, from ground cover to shrubbery to trees. And that at this point, the board will be looking for substantial box sizes as a replacement for trees that have been inadvertently taken out without city permission or this board's review. And that, given our previous history, those are going to be much larger than 24-inch box plants. We would look to the designer to give us professional opinions to tree species, types, and largest sizes available. And just a parenthetic note, as I made my opening statement, your client doesn't have a lot of credibility. So I think they need to think about, if they're going to replace those trees, we're going to be looking at large specimens. So they need to understand that that will be a requirement. So if it's 5-to-1 for oaks, some of my landscape colleagues may ask for some very large trees. And it's unfortunate. Had your owners come to us first, this would have been an entirely different situation, and I think most of us would have had a different attitude. So make that clear to them. That's my motion. I don't know if anybody wants to add anything or did I forget something?
We have a second first? You second?
Yes.
Brian? Okay. Under discussion?
Yes.
I would like to add professional irrigation plan to this as well. but-
Okay, as a part of the
As
professional
a part of
landscape.
the, as part of that,
assumed that,
with fire zones indicated, everything that's going to go through Ann Marks at the fire department, it needs to be per her standards as well.
I just want to add, study the tower element, perhaps making it circular. Also, perhaps on the south elevation, adding a round window or something in the tower element, rather than just those tiles.
I'll accept that.
Okay. All right, then, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's unanimous.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you,
Thank
Mr.
you.
Esparza.
Sorry to give you such a hard time, but this is an important project.
It's an important.
And, yeah. I mean, no trees have been removed since I came on the project.
We understand it's not
I understand, that's a
That's not
difficult
your fault.
position
I
to
can
put
say,
you in.
yeah.
Yeah, they put you in a bad position. Okay, we'll
Go up
keep
to San Simeon.
Yep. Those,
try.
the three houses at St.
For a
Simeon are,
vacation.
I haven't traversed Castle, so.
go down and have the wine.
Yeah, a great one.
Anything else?
Probably right after this meeting.
Oh, yes, so our number 3 item has been postponed. That was 3002 Cliff. So we will now close the July 29th, 2013 meeting of the Single Family